think she's more of a choice than a must-have, but there's plenty to like there.
We're Monsignor, one of the US hothouses. She might barely be noticed.
Cut the cameras, dead ass. Cut it right now.
Welcome back, Aeka.
Hi, I'm Aeka, Nancy's friend.
We're both from the same city in India, and she applied early, I applied regular. I read my admission file, I think, earlier this summer, and she just did it today. And we're almost the same person, we think. So we just want to compare our learnings.
Yeah, and we're also 2 out of 3 people who got accepted from our city in India.
So while we read our files, we're not allowed to take pictures or any sort of record of the admission file that we're reading, but we're allowed to take some notes. So hopefully we got a good sense of what they were trying to say about us. First, what we want to do is go to our application that we submitted, and then we're going to talk to you about our profile.
We both did the IB diploma in different schools in our city in India. I didn't do class rank, neither did yours.
Neither did I. My 9th and 10th grade, I did IGCSEs, which is like an international version of the GCSEs, and then IB for 11th and 12th.
And for me, in 9th and 10th grade, I did our national curriculum, which is the CBSE, and in 11th and 12th grade, I did the IB diploma.
I did biochem, mathematics, analysis, and approaches HL, English, Lang and Lit, physics, Spanish B SL with TOK, and my extended essay in biology.
For me, I did biology, chemistry, and mathematics, applications, and interpretation HL. I did English, Lang and Lit, psychology, SL, and I did Spanish B ab initio. I also did TOK and my extended essay in biology too.
Did you write honors?
Okay, I only put in like 3 awards. These are all so bad. These
No, it's not.
Yes,
bad.
it is. How is
Only
it
a national award bad? I have 5 awards. She has 3. Both of us have some international, national, as well as school level awards.
And I would definitely say, like, objectively, her awards are substantially better than mine. Mine were just like random awards I had gotten. This is just like fact.
Testing.
You took so many. Wait. Why is your application so much better than mine?
No, it's not.
I failed world history and I failed AP physics. I literally only listed my SAT. Wait, that's so foul.
Which is okay. So goes to prove that you don't need to have like insane testing or scores because you don't have to report everything either.
I didn't report any APs on my application. I just reported 1 test. I took the SAT in October 2019, and I got a 790 in the reading section and an 800 in the math section, so a 1590. And in my essay, I got an 18.
So I took both the ACT and the SAT, but I only reported my ACT, it looks like, which I got a 36 and a 33 in my writing. I took 3 subject tests, chem, math, and bio, molecular, 800, 800, 790. And I took 5 APs, comp sci, psych, physics, C, mechanics, US history and world history, 5s except for the US history, which is a 4.
Yeah, we're going to be talking about some of the activities. So probably the biggest one of mine was I did a summer program in biochemistry that I kind of put as the first. It was kind of competitive to get into. Probably my biggest other activity was community service. I did a lot of volunteering in like urban and rural medical camps, basically free clinics around India and in my city. And I had a couple of other research things. I did a little bit more volunteering. I had my own little club, which I did like sustainable menstruation stuff, and I was involved in music as well.
For me, I put down 10 activities. My top 2 were research, so it was to do with the lab that I worked in, my work, and then going to compete with the research that I published. The next one would be like leadership. I was part of student body, more research, a little bit of theater or drama, summer programs, a little bit of volunteering, dance, and swimming, which I used to do during high school.
I think it was your last one?
Yeah, because I wasn't like successful.
But it's so much better than mine. No, it's not. What's wrong with you? It's better than mine.
I did more things, but none of them counted as much as just writing. That's why I wanted to compare ours, because we're like the same person, but our style of application is so different. Okay, we're gonna go through our essays and do like a 1-sentence summary of what we wrote.
So my essay, my Common App essay, it wasn't really about anything academic. It was about growing up with my mom, who is deaf. So it was kind of just about how we navigated the world and how she navigated the world and how I helped her. And basically, it ended with like how my communication skills are very strong because I grew up with a deaf mother.
Also, Aeka writes beautifully. Her essays are so pretty and nice to read, so. I'm not as good of a writer, so my essays are much more like bland and conversationalist, I guess. My personal essay was about my research experience, but not about what I did, but how it taught me to change the way I process the world around me and taking in other perspectives.
In the community disruption part, I talked about how COVID-19 basically affected my life and how I didn't leave the house much because I live with my grandparents who all have comorbidities. I couldn't continue my research that I was doing back home very intensively. I also had to do the summer program remotely that year. And I talked about how I learned to code through like Coursera and stuff, and I couldn't do a bunch of other different things, yeah.
Yeah, same thing. COVID disrupting certain plans, including like a medical camp and my summer program. I do also want to point out that I was on two minds of submitting this part of the community disruption because I didn't want to come out as privileged, that the biggest disruption I had was not being able to do certain programs.
Like, I recognize how lucky I am to
Exactly.
do the research that I'm doing and to have these be like the worst disruptions. But also it's important to recognize that even the smallest disruptions were significant.
And then I think for both of us, our additional information was just maybe some more clarification about the research we did, some links if we had papers.
It was just extra information about us, basically. So now we're going to be talking about the Yale specific parts of our application. One thing that is very significantly different is I applied to Yale through restrictive early action, which means I applied in November, and Monsi applied RD, which means like she applied in January, right? Yeah. I applied as like a prospective MCDB major, and I submitted a STEM supplement, a science and engineering supplement.
I also did as an MCDB major. My other academic interests were neuroscience and theater studies, and I submitted a dance.
Sorry. Go ahead.
I submitted a dance and science supplement.
Why is yours so like boring, girl? Please.
I'm gonna take her out of this
No,
video.
you have so
Leave.
many. Essay. It's just not you. Like that's the only reason I'm like weirded out about it. You know, it's like written well. It's just that it's not you. Anyways. Okay, the only reason I'm so mean to Monsi is because we're friends, so I can be mean to her. But no, it's a good essay.
I think what she was saying is completely right. I don't like my essays because I don't necessarily like identify with them. They're not who I am in person. They're very much a very me on paper kind of essay. A missed opportunity, in my opinion.
I think that was a big difference between our applications. My essays were a lot more straightforward, simple, because that's kind of my writing style. Yeah, they're very narrative, exactly. Monsi's are more descriptive, 100%.
Descriptive and conceptual.
Yeah.
So the first essay that we talk about is your academic interest essays. Why do these areas appeal to you? I talked about the concept of life and how I enjoy exploring it.
I just talked about how like specific diseases run in my family. Basically, I talked about I want to study biology because it's a way to cure diseases, but I talked about it in a much more way that was very specific to me and specific to my life.
The next essay is why Yale. I talked about the majors that I want to go into and why. I talked about resources that they had with regard to research and the liberal arts education. So I also mentioned certain classes that I was really interested in.
I talked about how the reason I was interested to come to Yale is I thought it was a great student community, student body. I talked about how Yale doesn't really restrict you to any aspect of who you are, and I want to be free to kind of do a bunch of different things without being like fit into a box or kind of a niche, which is something I really do like about Yale, and it's a sentiment I felt in my time here. And I also did talk about like various clubs at Yale, various classes that I actually am involved in right now. The process of college is like so removed when you're writing the applications,
Right.
but you really do get involved in the things that you write about in your application, which
Then it goes to the shorts. What inspires you?
providing a voice to people who don't have them.
I wrote Acts of Humanity. What's a guest speaker?
I wrote in Nannerl Mozart.
I wrote about someone who managed two different aspects of her life, which is what I wanted to ask about as well because I was interested in both theater and biology.
The residential college thing, I just wrote in someone who is like very involved in music.
For my Yale course that I would teach, I once again combined my interest for medicine and drama.
I combined my interest for medicine and music. That's literally so foul.
The next short is, would you hope to add to your seatmates' experience? And I've talked about being a good support system for them.
I pretty much talked about that too.
What is the next essay? Something that you're passionate about.
Yeah.
I wrote about looking at cancer through research because it reminded me of some books I've read and how it is a self, just as smart and fast, but with a detrimental agenda, and how you fight against that.
So I talked about how my experience in a medical camp with a patient who had cancer kind of linked to my interests doing research in cancer biology.
Chosen essay. You did A, I did B, so I don't know what the prompts are, but
No,
we did each other
I know
ones.
A is community. A was like reflect on a community that you're involved in. Yeah, I think it might have been your goals.
It talks about how medicine is a combination of science and service, and I wanted to focus on the service part of it because I felt like a lot of my application was very sciencey. I talked about society, human life, and how Yale have opportunities for me to explore the community part of medicine, which is really important to me.
I honestly talked about something really similar, but because my prompt was different, I related it differently. It was talking about reflecting on a community that I was part of. So I talked about how I volunteered at a leper colony. I realized essentially that having that experience would drive me to create change in the world and make the world a more inclusive space. We also do not have any family, any siblings, or any relatives employed at Yale, so we don't really have any connections. We're not legacy students or anything like that.
Right.
Wait, sorry, this is gonna be so bad to edit for you, because it's just so much bullshit that I'm like, wait, no!
Now we're going to open our notes.
One other really important thing, a difference between Monsi and my application, was that I did not have an interview, whereas Monsi did, which is why I don't have an interview report, whereas Monsi does.
Basically, my interviewer really liked me. That's the overall thing. She said I was very personable, and that I value relationships. She talked about my leadership position with me. She thought that I could explain my work very efficiently and effectively. Talked about things that were common to her as well, so she enjoyed the way I hold a conversation. She said I was very knowledgeable and that I would be a positive impact on other people's lives, full of energy and open-mindedness to take advantage of Yale's many opportunities. Those are the phrases I've written down. I do think for me, my interview was a huge pushing point.
Okay, so in terms of reader one, they wrote down a couple of like demographic information about me. They somehow converted my IB scores to a GPA, which I don't know how.
They don't do that for me.
I got a consistent 44 on 45s. So they somehow converted that to a weighted GPA scale of a 4.26 and an unweighted of a 4.0, which I don't know how they did that, but they did. I was predicted a 45 in the IB.
So my IB diploma, I got a predicted 44 because my school does not predict 45s. Eventually got a 45, no A levels, and test scores, they also wrote down my 9 A stars from my 9th and 10th grade IGCSEs. What's next?
Basically our like extracurriculars and what they wrote. My first Common App was a really solid piece. She also mentioned about the COVID-19 essay, so that's why I said you should definitely write something about that. I did a good job in my short answer. Like the biggest takeaway from my reader one is that my part was very authentic.
She liked my Common App essay. She said it was a nice piece. She also really liked my academic essays and my Why Yale, which is surprising to me because I wasn't too sure it was a great one.
Sorry, first recommendation was from my biology teacher, who said basically I'm very inquisitive and I was like a top 1% of the class. So thank you, Lakshmi ma'am. Second recommendation was from my chemistry teacher, who said I was very enthusiastic and very like knowledge seeking.
First recommendation was my English teacher. She said that I have a very good sense of curiosity and I easily outperform peers in most tasks. My T2 was bio. She said I read beyond the scope of the syllabus and I have a strong sense of innovation and concepts. Love my teachers. I miss them.
Also recommendation said I was a very focused and basically a top student again at my school.
For me, my college counselor said, some college counselor recommendations said that I'm someone who grew from someone who could barely make deadlines to a student of the highest quality, which is interesting because I don't know where that first part came from. The person who was reading it wrote, at the end of her comment. Oh no, I completely misunderstood this when I read my application file. I thought this was the reader's comment. So this is what my counselor said about me. My counselor also said that I have an unassuming nature which veils my brilliance.
That's such a weird thing to say from her counselor too. You don't have an unassuming nature. We mean high school. I'm making this hell to edit for Monsi. I'm literally saying so many things.
All right, so the next part is a couple of ratings. So they rate your ECs, your 2 teacher recommendations, and your counselor recommendation from a scale of 1 to 7. 7 being the highest you can get, 1 being the lowest.
So ECs, which I'm guessing is extracurriculars, I got a 5.
I got a 5.
My letter of recommendation for my biology teacher was a 6.
I also got a 6 for my English.
My letter of recommendation, my second one for my chemistry teacher was a 5.
My bio teacher was a 5.
And both our counselor recommendations were a 5. So I got the same ratings, but my overall rating was a 2+.
And I got a 2 for my first reader. The final rating is a 1 to 9, 1 being the highest, 9 being the lowest. I usually admit 1s and 2s.
Just to show, like, we got the same ratings, but our overall rating was different, and we got, like, basically our comments were very different.
Right. So that's the first reader, and then they give your file to a second reader, and they compare notes.
So my second reader basically corroborated what my first reader said. The biggest things said by both of them was that my passion for tackling inequities in healthcare was very realistic, genuine, was very authentic, and I come across as very genuine in wanting to help others. Probably some of them, my first reader was really nice. My second reader was probably more reserved in her opinion of me. They said basically that my research experience is okay, not very substantial, and my STEM research supplement didn't do much for my application. She said the sentence at the end, which I wrote down because I thought it was funny. She said, I think she's more of a choice than a must-have, but there is plenty to like here. So.
I think it's a trend for your second reader to be much more harsh. A couple of interesting phrases that I wrote down word to word. If I was in one of the US hothouses, she might barely be noticed. But even there, she'd be solid, solid, solid. I don't know what that means. They said I benefit from a bland pool, which is the country of so many people. I don't know what that means because second writer did like my recs better than my second reader, sorry. And this was really funny to me. Apparently, they noticed that my college counselor wrote a similar comment about the growth for another applicant from my school, but thinks that the whole story was dramatized, and so that took away from my app. And they said we should look at this case hopefully, ...
So I thought another thing which was interesting is they talked a lot about Monsi's school.
My first reader said, rock solid, the good school outside of the 2 big cities.
Which is really weird because the city we come from is not a small city by any means. When they're looking at international applicants, particularly from India, they take your location into context. And your context very seriously.
They thought I had a friendly nature and values relationships.
Interesting.
Right, now ratings from the second reader. ECs?
My extracurriculars was rated a 5.
6.
My first letter recommendation was a 5.
6.
My second was a 5.
6.
My counselor recommendation was a 6.
6.
And my second reader reviewed me as a 2.
And I got 2+. So
we kind of got switched
around
to
this.
Yeah. Closing comments. So both me and Monsi were tour guides over the summer, and so we basically gave tours to prospective Yale students. So if you recognize us, that was us. Anyways, so I think what the biggest advice I would give to someone is be very authentic and genuine. That's literally the biggest takeaway of my application. Don't do anything in high school that you aren't passionate about. Make sure you write really strong, spend a lot of time on your essays. Make sure you're not saying anything because you think it sounds like Ivy League material. Just be yourself. I think that's my biggest thing.
Yeah, so I completely 100% agree with Aeka on that. Something I'd like to add to that is to value the relationships that you make during high school. Is that regard to your teachers, the friends around you, to your, counselor, because people take note, people write about it, and it also helps you have good people skills and communication skills. That's something that really stood out. They did make a very clear comment about how I am good with people, and positive impact, and I value relationships.
Probably my biggest surprise is they value letters of recommendation so much. I didn't even think about them that much when I was in high school, but they really do value them.
When I applied, I thought my activities would pull me through, and I hated my essays and thought that my interview went terribly, but it turns out my interview pushed me through. They liked most of my essays, and extracurriculars were just there on the side.
I think what got me in was just being who I am as a person. My essays I thought were very genuine, again.
Something I also say on my tours to people who ask is to write about your personal experiences. It's very easy to get caught in trying to boast about all the titles and awards and things that you've done, but you also want to looking at lessons that you've learned, being vulnerable, which is something that I included in my essays, so that you're talking about lessons, skills, and experiences that are unique to you, that will then help you contribute to whatever college campus that you're applying to, which is something that they want.
Yay!
Tell them how much you love me.
Oh.
Also, she got in early, and word goes around in the city, so I wasn't going to apply because I thought I wouldn't get in because they already took someone, like a girl in STEM, pre-med, from Bangalore, and I was like, oh, I'm not getting in. But yeah, I guess it goes to show, just apply. You never know what will happen. You cannot truly understand this process. It is so random just because of the number of people who are applying, the number of people who get in. It just doesn't make sense half the time. So shoot your shot.
Very true.